Something we do not talk about nearly enough as environmentalists is intersectionality. Now, I am glad it's something that is becoming more and more common to be talked about, but perhaps you've been confused about why environmentalists talk about voting rights and LGBTQ rights and healthcare and homelessness. Because what does all of that have to do with the planet? Everything. Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all sorts of things, zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste. And if you're new here, you might notice that I talk a little bit too fast. There's a little gear icon right down here where you can change the speed, so go ahead and fix that to whatever suits you. I wanted to make this video because I'm starting to talk a lot more about politics recently. Not like a lot, but more than the average environmentalist does, and that is because politics is related to environmentalism, and environmentalism is related to politics. Everything is political, and everything is connected back to environmentalism. So first, let's talk about what even is intersectionality. So according to Oxford Languages, it is the interconnected nature of social categories such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So it explains that white women face discrimination and black people face discrimination, but the discrimination that black women face is different. It is a deeper level of discrimination, and it is different from what white women and black people in general face. And that's just one example. This intersection could also be based off of wealth, sexuality, gender, upbringing, education, disability, and so much more. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend The Intersectional Environmentalist by Leah Thomas. We read this for January for my Eco Book Club. You can join us down below. And she takes us through all of these different intersections and how they play into all of us becoming successful, inclusive environmentalists. We all learned so much in the book club about being inclusive environmentalists, which we'll talk more about throughout the video. So how does intersectionality play into environmentalism? I'll let Leah Thomas describe it best herself. She says, intersectional environmentalism is an inclusive version of environmentalism that advocates for both the protection of people and the planet. So this means a few things. For one, that means we need to listen to the voices of people who are often the most marginalized and not included in these conversations normally. This includes, but is not limited to, people of color, indigenous peoples, disabled people, queer people, women and femmes, and more. And there has been good progress here in recent years. I don't know about you, but climate spaces, in particular like climate science, was heavily dominated by men, and especially in politics. And even up until recently online, like the eco-content creator space was heavily dominated by white women. Now that's not to say that, people of color have never been in the picture, or indigenous people or women have never been in the picture. They have, but it's just that we are now finally starting to listen to them, which is extremely important. And it's also too important to acknowledge that they have not been listened to over the past decades and centuries. Number two, this means that we need to look outside of our own worldview and have empathy with other people. I will relate this to my own environmental origin story, and I'll talk more about that in the coming videos on how the military made me woke. But that is, I grew up in rural Ohio, where almost every single person I interacted with daily for 18 whole years was white, middle class, Christian, straight presenting, so on and so forth. There are very few people of color. I don't recall a single immigrant that I knew. Very few out queer people. I barely knew any atheists, and pretty much everybody lived in a very similar looking house. There was no homelessness in my town. You get the idea. Not only that was I stuck in this closed off worldview, not to say closed-minded, but just that it was a bubble. I didn't know anybody else that didn't look and think exactly like I did. But also, I didn't experience the effects of climate change. There was no air pollution. There was very little physical pollution. We had the occasional drought. We had the occasional weather event that probably is climate related, but was not recognized in the early 2000s. And because climate change, or global warming as it was better known at the time, didn't affect me, I didn't care about it. Of course, I was just a teenager. I give myself some slack there as well. If I was a teenager in Southern California where there were often fires, I would probably feel a little bit different. Anyway, it took me moving out of Ohio to even start to talk to people and experience different worldviews and have empathy with others and their worldviews that I start to become a more inclusive person, let alone an inclusive environmentalist. And this is why empathy is so important, and having an open mind and listening to other people with different experiences than you, because I do not know what it means to be poor. I do not know what it is like to be black or indigenous. I do not know what it's like to be an immigrant in the United States. But I can listen, I can learn, and I can empathize with those experiences and understand why people do the things the way they do, why people live the way that they live, why people make the choices that they make. I can care about them not because they affect me, but because they affect a fellow human. All of that to say, intersectionality to me, I think it opens our hearts and our minds to more issues than just what impacts us. It creates a spark in us to fight for all injustice because it's all connected. Intersectionality is also important because we need everybody part of the movement. Once again, I think Leah says it best. She says the earth and its ecosystems thrive on diversity, and so does climate action. We need biodiversity for our planet to survive, and we need diverse voices and opinions and experiences in the climate movement for our movement to survive and thrive. Not only that, but I think the general public needs to be able to see themselves as part of the movement. In a movement that's heavily dominated by straight white people, why would queer people see themselves as a place in the movement? Why would people of color see themselves as a place in the movement? If someone from the general public sees a disabled climate activist, they might then feel more inspired to join the movement themselves because that person looks like them, that person feels like them. You get the idea. It goes for any demographic. Representation matters in two ways. It fosters empathy with those who are not part of that group, and it inspires those who are in that group to join. I follow people of color climate activists to learn about their worldview and their perspectives on climate change that I would not get from my fellow white creators. I follow climate creators from other countries to stay informed about global issues. And I got involved because I saw people who looked like me as part of the movement. Again, the movement was heavily dominated, especially in online spaces, by white women, so it was very easy for me to see my place in the movement, but that is why I joined, because I saw, oh, that person looks like me, they think like me, they act like me, I want to do what they're doing. I think intersectional environmentalism comes down to one main point. Climate justice and human justice are inextricably linked. We cannot continue the fight for broad climate change while ignoring the fight for other human rights issues. Notice that I said other issues. That's because climate justice is a fight for human rights. The right to clean air, clean water, no pollution, and a livable planet. But other human justice causes are just as important to the movement, to include but not limited to incarceration, police brutality, indigenous sovereignty, access to healthcare, education, and so much more. Another quote from the book that I really loved, and I'm paraphrasing here because I did not write it down word for word, it is that we need to stop asking ourselves which movement is more important, which movement is worth more of our time. She says that is the wrong question to ask. All movements for human rights deserve our undivided attention because they're inextricably linked. They are all interconnected and it is all connected to climate change. I have a full list of activists up on my website for people to follow from all different walks of life, all different regions of the world, all different parts of the United States. So you can check them out down below and shout out your favorite content creators down below and I can add them to my website as well. I think our biggest takeaway from the book club was that this book, The Intersectional Environmentalist, is an absolutely great starting point, a great beginner building block, but you have to keep building from there. Don't just read this book and say, I'm an intersectional environmentalist. Yes, you are, but keep learning more about all of these different issues. So if you want to dive deeper, I have some more books that I will throw up on the screen right now, but once again, the full list of books is also on my website for books that have built me as an environmentalist, as an intersectional environmentalist, as someone who is now becoming more interested in politics and how politics and climate change relate to one another. I have a lot of books up there, so go check them out and also check out my reviews over on my Bookstagram, which is the handle right here, also tagged down below. And all of these books I have reviewed in depth on the channel that you can check out in this video. First, we have Cobalt Red by Siddharth Kara. This is about how mining in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is extremely harmful to the people, toxic to the environment, uses slave labor, but that's how we power all of our devices, to include green energy. Consumed by Aja Barber is a great book about fast fashion and how we are consuming way too much stuff, and how fast fashion is linked with the exploitation of women and children in many different countries around the world. Let This Radicalize You by Kelly Hayes and Mariam Kaba is such a great book for activists and organizers. Essentially, the point of this book is when there's a moment of despair, when there's a moment of fear, of anxiety, don't let it drive you into further despair. Let it drive you into activism. Let it radicalize you. Let it get you moving. And it is a really inspiring book. Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis is a really great book on intersectionality and shows us how different struggles throughout the world, such as Palestine, Ferguson, and so many different other sort of social justice issues are linked to climate change and how they're all linked together as well. I think it's pretty bold to say this is my favorite book for 2025 already, but Just Mercy, I read it in like the second week of January and I instantly declared it my favorite book for the year. It is so good. It is about the broken prison system. It is about the prison slave system and how all these different injustices link together. Race, wealth inequality, homelessness, mental health, especially when it comes to veterans, how that's all connected to our broken prison system. Such a good book. And last but not least, because there are more on my website, is Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. This one was extremely eye-opening to me because, you know, I consider myself a feminist, but I didn't realize how white my feminism was until I read this book. And this really opened my eyes to different forms of feminism and kind of made my feminism and my environmentalism more intersectional. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this. This is a very important topic. And again, I think this will make us all better environmentalists and all better activists when we include everyone in all of these movements. I think this is especially important now as the Trump administration demonizes immigrants, demonizes people of color, demonizes LGBTQ people, and anybody that they declare is a DEI hire, which includes veterans, by the way. My husband Dan is a DEI hire. He's a white man, a straight white man. Now more than ever, we need to listen to these people. We need to listen to them, especially in the climate movement, but with any human justice movement. And I think in the next 4 years, we're really gonna start to see how interconnected all of these things are. Because the Trump administration is not gonna do anything for the climate. We already know that, but they're doing a whole lot for all of these other so-called issues, these so-called enemies that they have declared against themselves. We're really gonna start to see how it's all connected, so pay attention and be sure to keep your environmentalism intersectional. And remember this, the next time you see an environmentalist talking about LGBTQ rights, you see an environmentalist talking about people of color, you see an environmentalist talking about homelessness, this is why. because it is all connected and it all matters. So thank you again for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you found it valuable. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone else who might find value in this as well. And lastly, if you want to join the Eco Book Club, once again, the link is down below. It is $1 a month to join our chats over on Discord. And if you don't want to join, maybe you don't have the time or the money, again, you can read all of the books on my website. I still share all of the books that we're reading. You just can't join the discussion unless you're part of Discord. So anyway, check out my full book list. Keep reading, keep staying educated, keep having empathy. It is so important to have empathy with others. Anyway, I will see you in the next video, but until then, remember that your small actions make a big difference in the long run. Bye, guys. Did I do my intro? I think I did. I must have. I did the back half of it. So according to Oxford Languages, it is the interconnected nature of social categorizations. I said that right, I think. So according to Oxford Languages, it is the interconnected nature of social categorizations. I am talking too fast, so it does not come out. So according to Oxford Languages, it is the interconnected nature of social categorizations. Social categories? I'm gonna say categories. According to Oxford Languages, it is the interconnected nature. I can do it. I can get through this one sentence. So according to Oxford Languages, it is the interconnected nature of social categories such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group. Okay, there's more to the definition. Let's keep going.